one of the questions I get a lot is, what is the proper way to clean our aluminum radiators? First of all, I'm going to tell you, do not use a power washer on it. Don't use a high pressure car wash, because when you do that, you start bending the fins over, the cooling fins, which basically restricts the airflow through the radiator. I don't feel like you can clean a radiator correctly while it's still in the car. I know a lot of times if you got a shroud, it's a pain to pull it out. But I suggest pulling the radiator out, blow it out first. And if you got a concrete floor in your shop, make sure the concrete floor is clean. I'll lift the radiator up, pull the radiator about 2 feet off the ground with the outside, not the engine side, but the outside of the radiator facing down, and just basically drop it where it hits floor flat. That'll shake a lot of the debris and the bigger debris that's stuck between the fins out. And then after you do that, take an air hose and blow it out, or you can rinse it out with with just a garden hose or a low pressure water deal. But you want to be able to literally almost see through that radiator when it's clean. If when you're maintaining your car, you wash your car after a weekend's of racing, look down there and see how much dirt and stuff's collected in the front of the radiator, because you can't run a screen fine enough to keep all the small dirt out of the radiator and still let the car cool. Keeping that radiator clean is huge. One of the things and I'm sure, Ben, you can comment on this. I see a lot of guys with the motors a little bit hot at the racetrack. Well, the first thing they want to do is blow water through the front of the radiator while it's hot. And I think there's some, Ben, you might be able to explain it better, but I think there's some expansion issues on the aluminum tubes when you do that, and it actually hurts the radiator. Is that not correct?
One of the things I like to do as far as cleaning radiators goes is just soak them. If you got time, take it out on Monday, just soak it in some type of a kiddie pool or something like that. It works really, really well. Like where X talked about, just, dropping it on a hard surface. We also talked about there, cooling the engine down at the racetrack. One of the things you run into if you start pouring the water over that radiator and, sucking it through the radiator, trying to cool it down, is now any of that dirt that's in there now turns to mud, which if you've ever worked on a car that has, dried mud on it, turns into concrete. So it's really hard to get it out of the radiator once you're done with that. The other issue is the water really won't have a chance to completely evaporate out of that radiator. It takes a while for that to dry out, the little fins and everything inside the radiator. So now you go back on the racetrack for the feature where it's dustier and a little drier dirt. Now it collects to that water that's stuck in the radiator, and now you've got the radiator even more plugged up than it was before. So I know in some cases you have to do it as emergency trying to save an engine, but anything you can do from pouring that water over the radiator it's going to save you some headache later on the night. If you do have a case where you've got to cool the car down like that, I'd really recommend just changing the radiator out. After you get everything cooled down, it's safe to do it. Just change it out, because if not, you're going to have the same issue again in the future. As far as the thermal shock goes, anytime you take something that's hot like that radiator would be and you pour cold water over it, there's definitely a thermal shock there that can cause some issues later on. I don't know if there's some expansion issues per se, but it does cause some fatigue issues that you can have later on in the life of the radiator.
One thing about the aluminum radiators, you have a reasonably fresh radiator and you get a small hole in it. AFCO makes some plastic weld that is real simple to use. You basically clean the aluminum, and where the hole is, I always take a small pair of needle nose pliers and pinch the tube just a little bit. But the plastic weld works really, really well. You basically put it on like solder, use a small propane torch and heat it on there. But you can save a radiator that way, and still be able to use it after it's had a small hole in it. I've patched several of them and never had an issue with that.
For more information on this or any other AFCO products, check us out at afcoracing.com.